So the aforementioned Misouri versus Biden. All right, so most of our folks probably know, but in case you don't, this is the case that was brought by the attorney generals of Missouri and Louisiana against the Biden administration for allegedly, we'll use that word, violating the First Amendment and its contacts with tech companies like Twitter. It could determine the future of speech online, the future of sites like yours, shows like ours. After the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down 6 of the 7 injunctions put in place by a district court judge, the administration still decided to take the case to the Supreme Court, which you decided, as a nerd, I appreciated the reference, the Borg making a mistake. So what did you mean? How did the Borg make a mistake by taking this to SCOTUS instead of just letting sleeping dogs lie?
Well, the thing is that even if there is an injunction by a district court saying nobody can talk to these people for any reason, the appellate court cut out the broadness of that ruling and limited it basically to saying you have to follow the law, which they were already violating. So if they were being smart, they could have just said, oh gosh, yeah, well, we're sorry, we'll stop doing that, and just continue doing the same shit. There's no enforcement mechanism in there. Like those judges aren't going to demand it's not that kind of settlement, right? Where they would have had to report, on a regular basis. So, but the plaintiffs' lawyers thought after the appellate court ruled that way that they would not be able to politically allow a judgment that said that the Biden administration violated the First Amendment to stand, and they were right. Where I screwed up is I assumed that it would, if it went up to the Supreme Court, that it was going to win. Now I hear that actually there's a very real possibility that it could lose up there, and that they may even need one of the liberal judges to defect in order to get it, because, well, for a variety of reasons, but among other things, because how many serious rulings against the Department of Defense have you seen from that court? Like, not many. Some of the judges apparently are very shaky on this issue. So I thought they screwed up by sending it to the Supreme Court, but maybe they didn't.
See, I would have thought the same thing, that this court is definitely going to rule against them. But you're saying that's a much dicier proposition than at first glance.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking. There are a lot. Obviously, the plaintiffs' lawyers. There's a lot of people are involved in this case. There's a lot of eyes in this thing. I might be contributing to an amicus brief about it. We've talked to a bunch of lawyers. Some lawyers have thought about joining on to an amicus brief and decided not to because, among other things, because they weren't sure that it was going to win. So, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about how the Supreme Court works. I mean, there's the whole criminological aspect to this that, I've never had to cover anything involving them, but apparently it's not a sure thing. And
there's also a ticking clock, right? I mean, that's the other part. Like, they would want to get this settled before the election, right? Because, I mean, if the Biden administration were going to lean on social media companies to censor content they don't like, they'd want to do it before November of next year, not after. So the timeline is a factor, too. I don't know how that works when they're going to rule.
Yeah, but even if there's a brutal ruling saying, like, you can't have you can't do all these things, there's still no enforcement mechanism. You have to remember they were already actively violating the law. And even if the Supreme Court says the Department of Homeland Security can't get involved in domestic electoral issues, or call that cybersecurity or whatever, who's going to say that you'd need another executive branch agency to enforce that? And the problem is the whole executive branch is in on this. So,
right. That's
right.
true. That's the other thing, yeah. And even if they did enforce it, then the ticking clock becomes an issue again, because by the time you get through appealing that, and okay, now that we went through this process of setting the rules, then somebody breaks the rules, even if there is somebody who's willing to blow the whistle on it, which is doubtful. At that point, you have to see whether or not they actually did break the rules. At that point, we're well past November of next year, right? Like they'll be able to just push this past the election either way.
Right. The one good piece of news is that, from what I understand, there is no election integrity partnership type thing in the works right now. They had a second one. They had a smaller scale version for 2022, but there's nothing that I know of for 2024 set up. But as we saw, they can do these things pretty quickly. So I mean, the last one, the one in 2020, that the idea for it was in April, and they had it up and running by August. So yeah, we'll see.
Please clap.